Why Batman doesn't kill? That's the most burning question among Batman fans, and there are only two possible answers: the real-world answer and the comic book answer. Batman was created as a dark vigilante who didn't care if someone died as a result of his fight against evil. That changed when DC introduced Robin and aimed their comics towards kids, removing violent deaths from the stories. Since then, Batman has evolved into a pop culture icon. He is admired by people of all ages and from all over the world. A person like that can't be a killer. He is a hero and he makes money too. If he killed, we would not have all of his iconic villains or his greatest stories. That's the real-world answer. It's easy and simple. The comic book answer, on the other hand, is more complex. And that's because there is not just one answer. There have been many reasons over the years as to why Batman doesn't kill. The rule first appeared in the Golden Age, in Batman number 4, and it was mostly the result of the editorial decision to avoid violent deaths. In the story, Batman tells Robin that they never kill, but he doesn't give any deep or complex reason. Since then, many other reasons have appeared over the years, including not breaking the law, honoring his parents' memory, not becoming like the man who killed them, and preventing that kind of tragedy from happening again. All of them are very valid reasons, but none of them are strong enough. One of the more recent ones and the most well accepted is the one from Under the Hood, where Batman explains to the recently revived Jason Todd why he refuses to kill the Joker. And people have taken that answer as canon and the ultimate reason why Batman doesn't kill in general.
If I allow myself to go down into that place, I'll never come back.
But that reason is a vague oversimplification of a complex character like Batman. It is not a satisfying explanation to such a complicated moral dilemma. It is a failed attempt to build character. That may be the most well-known reason, but it's definitely not the best in-universe answer to the question of why Batman doesn't kill, especially because that question was already and perfectly answered in 1991. Hello and welcome to the Legends of the Dark Knight series. In this episode, we check out the story that finally answers the question of why Batman doesn't kill. The story was published on the very first Legends of the Dark Knight annual, but before that, there are 3 other contemporary stories that are also relevant to that question. The first one is called Faces. It was the first Batman work written and illustrated by Matt Wagner, and it features Two-Face as the main villain. Wagner is a great visual storyteller. His art style provides a dark atmosphere, especially to the Art Deco architecture of Gotham. Wagner gives more attention to expression than to realism, and that's why his art is loose, but very effective. As for the writing, well, it could be better. What Wagner lacks in terms of writing, he makes up with his art. There is a sequence in this story where Wagner portrays a sexual encounter without showing anything explicitly, and it's brilliant. Faces is a 3-part story where Two-Face plans to steal an island so that people with deformities like him can live apart from the world. The concept reminds me of Genosha, the mutant island from the X-Men comics, except Two-Face wants to call this island the Deformity Nation, which is pretty silly. The people that Two-Face gathers to become part of his new island have all severe deformities. They are illustrated in a very grotesque manner, giving the story qualities of horror. It's very similar to the 1930s horror movie called Freaks, which is good since Batman operates in a world of horror. Unlike other contemporary Two-Face stories, Faces doesn't rely on the gimmick of the number 2 and the constant cliché of Harvey's duality. It is part of the story, but it's not constantly present, so it doesn't become annoying. The story provides an answer to the question of why Batman doesn't kill, but it's not a direct answer. It allows us to see Batman doing what he does best, detective work to save lives. So when 2 people die, Batman blames himself. He is tormented by that loss because he did his best and couldn't save them, because he values human life and can't stand the thought of people being killed. That's his biggest trauma and his strongest obsession. The story ends when Two-Face realizes that the Freaks are not evil. They refuse to kill Batman, and Two-Face has to accept that he is the only monster. Faces is a great story, and leaves the lingering thought about fate creating both Batman and Two-Face, drawing parallels between two characters who are simply on different sides of the same coin. The next story is called Family. It is a single-issue story by James Hutnell and Brent Anderson. In the story, Batman travels to South America to rescue Alfred, who was kidnapped by a major crime lord while he was on vacation. This is not a very remarkable story. The writing is rushed and the art is a bad mix between Neil Adams and Joe Kubert. Still, the story does provide an insight as to why Batman doesn't kill. When Batman learns that Alfred has been kidnapped, he swears that if anything happens to Alfred, he would kill the ones responsible. That's quite a strong statement, except for the fact that when the thugs lie and tell him that Alfred died, Batman doesn't kill them. He beats them up and continues looking for Alfred until he finds him. It certainly is a strange characterization, with Batman saying shocking, out-of-character statements, just like when he says he wants to kill the Joker more than anything else.
All I've ever wanted to do is kill him. A day doesn't go by when I don't think about subjecting him to every horrendous torture he's dealt out to others, and then end him.
He doesn't really mean that, because Batman is human, and he can say things without thinking, especially when someone he loves is in danger. He may lose control of his thoughts, but never of his actions. The third storyline is called Blades. It was written by James Robinson and illustrated for the first time on Batman by Tim Sale. Blade reintroduces the Cavalier, a long-forgotten Batman villain, but gives him a new backstory, a new design, and new motivations. This Cavalier is a tragic character. He used to be a stuntman for movies, but then he decided to become a vigilante like Batman, using his abilities with a sword. He gained fame and recognition, but after a while, that wasn't enough, and soon he became a criminal. This Cavalier is an interesting new take on a classic villain. He is deadlier and more serious than ever before. It's a shame that he was overshadowed by the subplot about a serial killer. Batman is focused entirely on the killer throughout the whole story, and only confronts Cavalier in the climax. Granted, that final battle is amazing, and it's mostly thanks to the art of Tim Sale. Even in his very first Batman work, Sale demonstrates that he has an enormous potential for Batman. His art is very atmospheric, and just like Matt Wagner, he prefers expression over realism, and it works. The final confrontation between Batman and Cavalier is an epic sword fight in the rooftops of Gotham, but because Batman was wasted after capturing the serial killer, the Cavalier wins the match. The twist is that Cavalier hoped Batman would kill him. But because that doesn't happen, he decides to end his life in what I think is one of the strongest endings to any Batman story. In the final moment, Cavalier drops his sword and takes out a gun. He drops all the bullets, unloading the weapon. He then tells Batman that every person has the capacity for evil, even him. Cavalier runs outside, gun in hand, to where the GCPD are waiting. At the sight of the man, armed with a gun, the police shoot him down and the Cavalier dies. Every man has the capacity for evil, even Batman. The Cavalier's final words also show us why Batman doesn't kill. He knows, he is aware that he is capable of doing it, but he refuses. The whole storyline revolves around unlikely people becoming killers, the Cavalier, the serial killer, and even the GCPD when they gunned down a man who was technically unarmed. All of them evil actions, and the only person who doesn't kill is Batman. That ending delivers a strong morale lesson, and it leaves us thinking about our own capacity for evil, something that Batman has to deal with every day of his life. We have now taken a look at 3 stories that allow us to understand Batman's determination to avoid killing. And now it's time for the definitive and most direct answer as to why Batman doesn't kill. Published in 1991, the first Legends of the Dark Knight annual features cover art by Mike Mignola, in which Batman, with his batsuit torn apart, holds a massive sword, standing his ground in a lake of fire, with a gigantic demon behind. This is the most appropriate cover for the book that holds the answer to the question of why Batman doesn't kill, a question that could only be answered by someone who understands Batman better than anyone else. Of course, I'm talking about the best Batman writer, Denny O'Neil. This story consists of several chapters and each one of them illustrated by some of the best artists in the industry, including Jim Aparo, Keith Giffen, Joe Quesada, Tom Lyle and Michael Golding, among others. This is definitely not a regular Batman story. He goes through a spiritual journey across time and space, and each chapter takes him to a different place, where he faces the same challenge, to protect a green bag that he calls his burden. First, he confronts demons in hell, then an evil supernatural woman in a castle, after which he faces an alien monster in the 1950s, gangsters in the 1930s, and finally he goes to Europe in the mid-1940s, where he confronts an army of Nazi zombies, led by none other than Adolf Hitler. Definitely one of the craziest Batman stories ever, and on every stage, the challenge is the same: protect the burden and kill the enemy. Batman succeeds in the first one, but he finds a way to avoid killing the enemies every single time. He defeats all of them, but he refuses to kill them. In one occasion, he even saves the criminal, not allowing them to die, because that is just as bad as killing them. The spiritual journey ends when Batman goes back to the real world. He is in a snowy mountain, tired, wounded, and dragging the Joker with him inside a green bag. The Clown Prince of Crime tells Batman he was hallucinating, which explains the strange journey. And then the Joker asks Batman why he doesn't just kill him and end their burden once and for all. Batman replies that he doesn't kill him because he believes in the absolute sacredness of human life. But that's not all. Batman also refuses to kill, because if he did, he would be no better than his enemies. He would be the insane Avenger that some people already think he is. And the last reason why Batman doesn't kill is because he refuses to give the Joker the satisfaction of seeing him fail, knowing extremely well that that makes the Joker absolutely miserable. In only 3 panels, this story answers the question once and for all. After this, there shouldn't be any doubts or questions about Batman's no-killing rule. Batman values human life above all else, because he witnessed that loss as a kid, and has sworn never to let that happen again. A person like that does not kill. Batman also doesn't want to stoop as low as his enemies, not because he thinks he is better than them, but to show everyone the difference between good and evil. A person like that does not kill. And finally, Batman doesn't kill, because that's the only way to upset the Joker and make him miserable. The Joker wants to see Batman fail. His crimes are only the means to a goal, which is to drive Batman to the edge and make him lose control, make him break his rule. If that happens, Joker wins. And in the real world, the Joker has already won. Over time, Joker has become more aggressive and unhinged, and his transgressions are more violent and brutal. In the Bronze Age, Joker would kill 5 people, and that would be too much. Nowadays, Joker kills an entire movie theater, and that's only the beginning. Modern comic fans and people in general think that Batman should kill, even if only the Joker, because he causes too much damage and killing him is the only solution. But that's exactly what the Joker wants. That's how he gets the last laugh. If Batman kills, the Joker wins. If Batman kills, we all lose. That's why the no-killing rule is Batman's burden. And the way the story ends speaks volumes, with Batman arriving to a resting place in the middle of the snow, and a caption that reads, "He will rest as even he must. Later, he will assume his burden again, and drag it on into the years." I'm honestly surprised nobody else is talking more about this comic, but I hope that this finally answers, once and for all, the question of why Batman doesn't kill. I believe this is the absolute best answer ever to that question in any Batman comic. Thank you all for watching, and if you like this video then subscribe now and ring that bell, because in the next episode we'll find out why people live in Gotham City. Until then, Godspeed, my friends.